Rachel Zegler was supposed to be Disney's next shining star, handpicked by none other than Steven Spielberg to lead in West Side Story and then chosen as the face of Disney's live-action Snow White reboot. Her career was accelerated in a way most young actresses could only imagine.
I sat through the whole thing. This was really bad. It was extremely leftist on every political dimension. Racial politics, sexual politics, class politics, regime politics. Its narrative was cowardly. It was just awful.
Remaking the movie, they just got rid of the dwarfs. But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures. You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it, the disability, like we're a disability group, you just erase that whole.
This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of like, I don't know, vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing, before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
But here's the reality. Talent might open the door, but behavior can push you right back out. What began as a storybook ascent has now completely collapsed into one of the most turbulent downfalls Hollywood's witnessed in years. Behind the glitz and red carpets, insiders paint a far bleaker picture of Zegler. One brimming with arrogance, entitlement, and a string of strained relationships left on every set she's worked.
Controversy in Snow White. The dwarfs have been eliminated in the live action.
Yeah.
Now it's Snow White and the 7 magical beings.
Wait, it's 7 and the magical beings?
Yeah,
They won't even say
magical
and the 7
beings.
dwarfs?
No, because they're not dwarves. For right now, that's the only jobs that are there.
Doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
The movie has a major identity crisis.
Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantata is the only global solution.
Claims are now circulating that even Spielberg himself, the director who gave her that initial big break, was so exasperated by her conduct on West Side Story that he quietly swore never to collaborate with her again. And just when it seemed things couldn't worsen, they did. Disney's Snow White didn't just fail, crashed at the box office, accumulating losses so severe that the studio reportedly had to halt other projects. At the heart of it all, Rachel Zegler, the same. Actress who managed to alienate not just audiences.
Last week was a very big week, objectively a huge week. We had quite a few announcements as first live-action film, which is Snow White and the Evil Queen. And that's me, I'm Snow White, which is so fun.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie. Came out and she said, I apologize. Like I went too far, but it wasn't.
But allegedly her own co-stars, crew members, and even studio executives. This is the tale of how Rachel Zegler's Hollywood dream turned into a full-blown catastrophe. And how one of the greatest directors of all time may have been the first to raise the warning. Let's begin where the decline allegedly started.
It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime. And let me go ahead and let you know that they're absolutely f***ing atrocious.
Nobody wants a movie about true love. What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? It'd be outrage.
Queen, playing the evil queen. It was pretty amazing.
You say all you have to do to make your wish come true is let it echo, 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 echo.
On the set of West Side Story, for most actors, landing a Spielberg project is the peak of achievement. A chance to learn from a genius and showcase yourself to the world. But according to several whispers from inside the production, Zegler didn't quite embrace it that way.
It's awful, generic. Never mind that the lyrics make no sense at all. All you have to do to make your dream come true is let it echo. Is it like on a metaphor?
And you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
Broke out with this news, and I'm very, very, very excited and looking forward.
Sources close to the film allege that Zegler rapidly earned a reputation for being challenging to work with, particularly when it came to accepting direction. Spielberg reportedly had a distinct vision for how the character of Maria should be, portrayed classic, heartfelt, true to the essence of the original. But Zegler, she wasn't on board. She allegedly resisted firmly, wanting to reimagine Maria through a contemporary lens.
Hardcore.
They're petrified of some kind of backlash.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
Arguing that the role needed to embody modern notions of empowerment and independence. Now, questioning a director isn't always negative, but questioning Spielberg on his own film, a daring move. And according to insiders, it didn't land well. The back and forth grew so disruptive that some crew members called the set tense and draining. Spielberg, known for his composed demeanor.
She comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat, pretending like Rachel Zegler is the fairest of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
Part of the first, fairy tale ever told.
Disney deleted Someday My Prince Will Come and made a modernized feminist alternative.
Oh my God.
Was said to be noticeably frustrated during several critical rehearsals. One source even alleged Spielberg privately told colleagues that working with Zegler was one of the most aggravating experiences of his career. And while he stayed professional, in public, commending the cast and crew during press tours, those close to the production hint that, behind the scenes, he was already finished with her. But the tension on West Side Story was just the start. The real catastrophe was yet to unfold. If the drama on set wasn't enough, Zegler's casting as Maria ignited an entirely different kind of controversy. While many applauded the choice of a Latina actress for the iconic role, it didn't take long for doubts to start circulating about Zegler's actual background. According to reports, some studio executives weren't entirely convinced of her claims about her heritage and allegedly requested her to verify her Latina identity during the casting process. Let's be clear, Hollywood has a long history of mishandling representation. But what made this situation particularly chaotic was how it all unfolded behind closed doors. Insiders claim that repeated requests for Zegler to confirm her background caused significant tension between her and the studio, allegedly. There were intense conversations about whether her casting would be perceived as authentic or seen as yet another case of Hollywood playing fast and loose with ethnic representation. And Zegler, instead of calming the situation with diplomacy, reportedly escalated, turning the conflict into a public spectacle during interviews where she accused the studio of doubting her identity. Whether those accusations were warranted or not, the outcome was the same: more drama, more headlines, and even more scrutiny on her every move. By the time West Side Story reached theaters, the behind-the-scenes noise had nearly overshadowed the film itself. But as tough as things were during that first chapter of Zegler's career, the real collapse was still looming. When Disney selected Zegler to star in their Snow White reboot, it was meant to be her comeback. A chance to shake off the West Side Story drama and establish herself as a true Alistair. Instead, it became the greatest disaster of her career. The numbers don't lie. With a bloated budget rumored to be between $240 and $270 million. Snow White needed to be a blockbuster just to break even. But the movie barely crawled past $194, $8 million globally, falling woefully short of expectations. And while Disney tried tossing the narrative, citing market conditions and changing audience preferences, most people weren't convinced. Industry insiders pointed fingers directly at Zegler, and honestly, it's hard to dispute their reasoning. Before the film even reached theaters, Zegler's own words had already sabotaged the project. Her now infamous interviews criticizing the original Snow White as creepy and outdated were like igniting a firestorm. Fans who grew up cherishing the 1937 classic weren't just disappointed, they were outraged. But it wasn't just her critiques of the story that caused issues. Ziegler's dismissive attitude in press junkets, where she scoffed at the idea of romance and fairy tales and ridiculed the original storyline, made her seem utterly out of touch with the audience she was supposed to captivate. Instead of generating excitement, every new quote from Zegler became another blow to the project. And as if the public backlash wasn't enough, rumors began spreading that even Disney executives were stunned by how poorly the film was being received. According to some sources, internal discussions were happening long before the release about whether Zegler was the right face to lead the studio's next generation of princess films. Turns out she wasn't. But the damage from Snow White didn't just stop at poor box office numbers, had ripple effects across the entire Disney live-action pipeline. And what happened next sent shockwaves through the industry. If there's one thing you don't do when starring in a remake of a beloved classic, it's disparage the original. But that's exactly what Rachel Zegler did, repeatedly. In multiple interviews leading up to the release of Snow White, Zegler couldn't seem to restrain herself. Instead of embracing the magic and nostalgia that made the 1937 film iconic, she doubled down on calling it weird, creepy, mocking the idea of a prince saving the princess, sneering at the storyline as if it were beneath her. One quote in particular became the rallying cry for furious Disney fans everywhere. She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. It was meant to be empowering, but for many fans, it just came off as conceited. Let's be real. People didn't show up for Snow White expecting a lecture on feminism. They showed up for the fairy tale they adored. Instead, they got an actress who openly disrespected the very project she was hired to lead. Memes erupted across social media. YouTube critics went wild, and TikTok wasn't far behind, with creators racking up millions of views analyzing every condescending word that came out of Zegler's mouth. The backlash was fierce and unrelenting. But the worst part? She didn't retract her statements, didn't apologize. If anything, she seemed to embrace the drama, smiling smugly through interviews as if she were somehow above the criticism. By the time the movie hit theaters, the damage was done. Audiences had turned against her, and Snow White was already labeled a failure before the opening weekend even concluded. And as we all know now, that label stuck. But if you thought this was just about bad PR, brace yourself, because things were about to get even messier behind the scenes. As if trashing the original Snow White wasn't enough, Zegler's off-camera drama managed to turn the set of the film into a hotbed of political tension. Rumors began circulating that the set was divided. Some crew members allegedly felt caught in the crossfire, with off-camera conversations growing heated whenever politics entered the discussion. Publicly, the studio tried to keep things calm. They kept the cast apart as much as possible during interviews, carefully scripting joint appearances and avoiding any chance of the two leading ladies going off script. But behind the scenes, word was that things became so uncomfortable that certain scenes had to be reshot or avoided altogether to maintain peace. Marketing teams were reportedly scrambling to figure out how to promote the film without letting the political divide derail the press tour. And let's not forget, the press still caught on. Headlines about the strained dynamic between Zegler and Gal Gadot started appearing well before the movie even premiered. It was just one more disaster, piled on top of an already crumbling production. But the real fallout wouldn't just hit Snow White. It would end up shaking Disney to its core. Rachel Zegler entered Hollywood with the world at her feet, Spielberg in her corner. Disney rolling out the red carpet, a career path lined with promise. And yet, here we are, witnessing one of the swiftest downfalls in recent memory. From the alleged clashes with Spielberg to the catastrophic Snow White press tours and the tense political conflicts that erupted behind the scenes, Zegler has managed to turn golden opportunities into cautionary tales. The biggest studios in the industry trusted her with their most cherished IPs. And she disrespected both the projects and the fans who were supposed to support her. The lesson here: Hollywood doesn't offer second chances just because you're talented. It doesn't matter how many awards you've won or how many standing ovations you've received. When you burn bridges with the people signing your checks and the audiences buying the tickets, you're finished. Rachel Zegler's story isn't just about one failed movie. It's about what happens when ego overshadows gratitude, when controversy eclipses talent, and when the star of the show forgets that, at the end of the day, the audience always has the final word. And right now, that audience